Welcome to RSAC Conference 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRisk TV studio and Broadcast Alley at Moscone West. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me for this interview is Jason Mical, Field CTO at Devo. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So very interesting conversation today. Unfortunately, we only have two spots up here. It would have been nice to have Fred from Detecteam up here, but really looking forward to talking about this partnership here. So I think starting off, it would be good, just in case people don't know what Devo does, don't know what Detecteam does, if you could just give us the spiel there, the elevator pitch for both companies.
So from a Devo perspective, we are a security data analytics platform, and we snapped on a foundation of threat detection and incident response to be able to streamline the day in the life of SOC operators. And the nice thing about that as well is Devo's data agnostic, so you can ingest any data type, structured or unstructured, and be able to leverage that to monitor for any type of situation you want, whether it's cyber, fraud, compliance, whatever the necessary things may be. So it really is a streaming data analytics platform, so you're not having to wait for data processing, indexing, and all that. Really is enabling real-time threat detection for organizations.
Yeah, you're applying that rules as the data comes through.
Absolutely, in real time. And as far as the tech team, of course, their mode of operation is being able to generate real-world life attack scenarios on the fly using AI to ingest any kind of threat report, like from CISA or any source for that matter, and be able to extract all the TTPs out of it in a matter of seconds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And being able to produce a simulation of that attack.
Okay.
And as we all know, when these threat reports show up on people's bows, the CISO comes to their teams and say, are we ready for this new ransomware campaign or whatever it might be? And they get that deer in headlight look.
Yeah.
They're like, well, I got to get back to you, and they got to spend hours and hours reading that report, and then hours and days, if not sometimes weeks, depending on the complexity of how do we build the rules to make sure we can detect this new attack.
Yeah.
Well, that is a broken process. Nowadays, there is the capabilities to automate and streamline that process. But it doesn't end there, because at the point where you can finally figure out the TTPs and IOCs and all of that, how do you test it? The worst thing that organizations have to traditionally deal with is we built these new rules and we won't know if they're really working until it hits us.
Until we get attacked.
And we don't want to be figuring out, are we covered when the attack is on our doorstep? So this is the Detecteam engine is allowing the organizations to continuously assess and determine, are my detection rules up to date? Are they being modified when new modifications or variants or changes in this new attack occurs? Because we all know, especially like in a ransomware campaign or any type of traditional attack, the underlying code is always the same. It's repurposed. They change some techniques or tactics, but there's always foundational stuff there. And a majority of the attack sim things are like, well, look for this hash, look for this IOC. And if they change it, then you're like, it's very easy to change. So then you're kind of like, oh, we're covered, but then they tweak it for the subvert detections.
Evasions are very easy.
Very much so. So that's the real big power of the Detecteam engine, is being able to see if there's a new modification or a variant, make sure you're up to date, your detection rules get automatically updated, and you can simulate it to make sure that, not just your detections are there, but your incident response playbooks. What are my playbooks kept up to date to be able to respond automatically and efficiently?
Yeah. So two really important things I see there. One is not everybody can afford the detection engineering talent that they need.
Right.
So I think it's super important for vendors to be able to provide that.
Yes.
And then the other side of that, a lot of security people just don't have engineering backgrounds. They don't think about quality assurance and testing their stuff. Like an example I often use is from the Equifax breach. The company did a lot right. They were very quick to respond. They knew it was a concern. The emerging threats team produced a snort rule to detect an attack against the Struts 2 vulnerability, and they handed it off to the SecOps team who deployed the snort rule. Neither team thought to test it to see if it worked, and it did not work.
Right, exactly.
So, a very important component here to have that kind of feedback loop, because even existing rules, I imagine, you've got to go back and test those because the data itself might change.
Right.
That you're streaming into the platform that you're changing. Oftentimes, different logs, events, and things like that, you upgrade to a new major version of something. I remember from managing sims back in the day where you had to have a parser for everything.
Yes.
It was a bad day when you found out one of your major platforms had a new log format.
Right.
Then somebody would have to go back and rewrite the parser.
Yes, exactly.
And until they did that, we couldn't do anything with that data.
Right.
That data was useless to us.
Right. And even if it fired some type of high-level alert, if the data that's produced to the analyst is not parsed correctly, I don't know what to do with this thing. So yes, that's a never-ending battle for the engineering and the analysts.
And if that detection rule is expecting an IP address to be in this format in this field, in a certain way, and that changes, those detection rules can start failing without you being aware. And you don't want things to fail silently.
Right, especially when it's actually hitting your bow.
Yeah. So let's see here. So how does that integration work? Is it pretty simple integration for people to implement?
It really is. The nice thing about
plug
this,
together easily?
Yes, the nice thing about it is both are SaaS solutions. So bottom line is when you spin up your environment like the Devo security analytics platform, you create a user account with the access necessary for API connections to the Detecteam tenant. And it does it from twofold. One, it's going to be able to automatically deploy the detection rules when they get created, but also be able to send the data to the SIM to make sure the rules are working. It's very simple, but another unique thing that I think is very powerful for the Detecteam side of it is when you configure and you say, I'm going to launch this simulation, you can also, before you launch it, go into the simulator library and say, this is my my technology stack in my environment. This is my EDR, this is my firewall, this is my proxy, this is my blah, 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 blah. So that way, when you launch the simulation, it's 100% replicating what it would look like live in your environment. So it's just not throwing IOCs and data, it's 100% replicating what this thing's gonna look like. So that's a very, very compelling piece of it. But once you go in and configure the tech stack, you go in and configure the APIs, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
And then you launch simulations on the fly. You can build your own simulations if you had custom use cases in it that you needed, like insider threat or whatever, application monitor, whatever the scenario might be, you can customize on the fly your own attack simulations in Detecteam. But the nice thing is, because of this integration is so strong, if it generates the data sources from the telemetry selections you choose, the parsing's already there. It knows how to send the data in the right format so the detection rules will fire, and the presentation layer is parsed out so the analyst can get the context they need.
Right. Yeah, and just thinking about the workflow from the analysts themselves, this kind of elevates the type of stuff they're doing day to day.
It does.
Right? And instead of spending as much time writing the code for the detection, things like that. What do you see them doing, and what's the cadence of using the product? Is this something where you find people on a weekly basis? They're generating new detections, they're testing them. Is it a daily thing?
That's a good point. So there's multiple use cases in that environment. One could be if there's a new thing that hit the wild. I got to load this thing in and let the tools do it. That
triggers activity.
That triggers activity. But secondly, Detecteam comes out of the box with a very large library of simulations. They're always monitoring the new attacks in the wild, so they'll create their own out-of-the-box simulations. So think of purple teaming exercises, or tabletop exercises or things like that. People schedule and do those on a regular basis, right? Well, the thing about this is you could say, all right, once a week, once a month, once a quarter, I'm going to launch a handful of attacks to make sure our detections are current, but also our incident response and incident handling procedures are current. So that's a regular thing, because if you're not doing that as a security operations center and you're just waiting for something to hit you, that's the worst time to fine tune. Yeah. So it needs to be reoccurring regularly. But then again, the nice thing is that having the flexibility that when something new hits the wild, it takes me seconds to generate it and test it instead of weeks, if not months, to do it.
And as you mentioned purple teaming, I imagine this is like a really good intermediate step to get you ready for actual humans to come in and do pen tests,
Yes.
purple teaming, that kind of thing. And that's, as a former pen tester, that was something that was really frustrating to me, that a lot of folks didn't leverage their pen test as an opportunity to test their ability to detect attacks. Like you create I'd create a domain admin account or turn off antivirus on an endpoint or something like that. I know there's alerts telling them that these things are happening, but nobody sees it.
Exactly.
And it also addresses, I think, one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest gaps we see is we'll see vendors come out and say, we detected SolarWinds or something like that. Sure, you can detect everything if you just turn on all the logs. So, yeah, technically it's there somewhere.
Yes.
But if a human doesn't see it, it doesn't count.
That's right. And that's two things with that situation. One, we've always heard for decades about the alert fatigue problem.
Yeah.
Right? Well, there's another fatigue problem that the industry faces is threat intel fatigue.
Yeah.
Right? So they have the ability to extract automatically the newest, latest, and greatest threat intelligence, being able to automatically and dynamically create the rules and test them is really streamlining the security operations centers. But more importantly is, we all know tier one analysts are being fried and burnt regularly. So this is going to enable them to truly test their triage, their automations, their incident response functions and capabilities and skills, instead of having to worry about management of rules.
Yeah.
I mean, those are old school methodologies of how much time do we have to waste and not waste, but spend on engineering of the SIM. There's technology like we have today that can eliminate that barrier and really let them focus on the more important things of making sure they can respond.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's we're seeing MSSPs used as just a general like we should. Everybody's got to build the same detections. Everybody's got to detect the same attacks. Like attackers, they do these little evasions, but the core of the attack, as you mentioned before, it stays the same over and over. So I push back against that. Like attacks are constantly evolving. I guess you could say, and maybe that kind of evolution where it's very small changes over time. Right.
Agreed.
It's not vastly different from day to day. They're still stealing credentials. They're still exploiting the same stuff.
Yep.
I was just talking to Alex Pinto from looking at the DBIR report. We can see it not necessarily getting more sophisticated. Same stuff works.
Yes. It does.
And unless we get better at this, they don't need to.
Right.
They don't need to significantly change.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
But yeah, I love the automation, the orchestration, the integration between the two of them, because it's just way too much manual stuff still going on.
It is. I mean, we've lived in, when SOAR hit the market years ago, everyone was like, okay, we can automate a lot of the mundane steps. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of people struggled with fine-tuning or creating the playbooks, and it still is a problem for a lot of organizations today. But there was never the thought about automating the detection process.
Yeah.
And we're at a stage now, it's 2025, we need to be at that stage now. Yeah. So you mentioned a good point, the MSSPs, that's a huge vertical market for Devo.
Oh yeah.
It's huge because we have multi-tenancy out of the box, and with the capabilities we have for our managed service providers and MDR providers. This is another very powerful thing, is they like to sell their secret sauce of building their detection rules, but at least now the Detecteam engine can test them.
Yeah.
Right, and they could go to their customers and offer as a service to say, every quarter, per our SLA, we're going to do a threat assessment and detection assessment for you. FYI, we're doing it on the 30th of this month, and we're going to launch multiple attacks just to show that we got you covered.
Yeah.
So that's also very important space for us, is making sure our partners in the MSSP and MDR arena are spot on and can meet the SLAs that they agree to.
Yeah, and that's a kind of kind of do once, share, use many model.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense for 100,000 organizations to create their own artisanal detections, all for the same attack, all from the same ransomware threat actor.
Right.
It just makes absolutely no sense. We should, do more of this, figuring out how to benefit, build once, use many.
Right. Well, think about it. We've been in the industry a long time. When we first were doing incident response and we found IOCs, we would shove them under the carpet. We do our own little thing so it doesn't hit us twice, but we didn't share.
Yeah.
Well, fortunately now in the industry, we're sharing the threat intelligence, but we're not sharing detection rules.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where the arena needs to be now and that's something that Devo's also focusing on is the things that Detecteam is doing for us, we'll put it into the Devo tenant that it's configured with, but also if we identify that it's a worldwide situation and our user community at large would benefit from it, we have what we call Exchange, which we would upload those detection rules into Exchange and share it to all of our users.
Yeah.
Because we're all in the same battle together, right? Yeah. Share it, like you said.
And it's a great point. It's I gave a talk yesterday, and one of the highlights, one of the main points of it was attacks are public, defenses are private.
That's right.
That's right. We need to share more.
Absolutely.
So you basically, that was the crux of that slide that I had, which was I think the most important slide.
Absolutely.
in that talk.
Absolutely.
So excellent stuff. Thank you so much, Jason, for joining me today and having this conversation.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Be safe, everyone.
To find out more about Devo, please visit securityweekly.com/Devo RSAC. For all RSAC 2025 coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC. Thanks again, Jason.
Thank you.
Yeah. Stick around.